Today on Be Found, I'm joined by Christopher Cunningham, the Youth and Family Outreach Worker at Ballywillan. I'll put him into the hot seat to ask him a series of questions, but also then look at how he became a Christian and some of the difficulties Christians can have with their faith. Lastly, I'll also look at some of the things that him and his church at Ballywillan have been doing to combat the pandemic that we face. Welcome to Be Found. I'm your host, Gavin Scott, and in this podcast we'll be hearing from a different person each week on how Jesus has made an impact on their lives. It's a podcast particularly relevant today with the conditions we find ourselves in, and is for absolutely anybody who wants to tune in and hear real stories from people about their Christian faith. Before we introduce my first guest, I want to stress for the listeners that despite the fact that you will hear myself and my guests speaking at the same time, this podcast is recorded under the government and safety guidelines. Now, to stop me rambling on, our first episode features a guest who's been involved heavily with children's and youth work since he was a young lad in Terrace Row. He's been on internships with both Greystone Presbyterian and Highkirk and Ballymena. He's also been on Smiles and Exodus teams to Romania and involved with God Modex. Most people will know him as the current youth and family outreach worker at Ballywillan, although I know him best as the head judge in Terrace Row's Holiday Bible Club promo. Our guest today is Christopher Cunningham. Chris, remind people that I normally take fees for the resumes, but first of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Gavin. First of all, can I say thank you for having me on? And yes, you were going to give me 20 quid, wasn't it? Something like that?
I think you were going to give me 20 quid, more like.
We'll work that out afterwards, sure.
We will, yeah. Okay, so Chris, a lot of things there that you've done or been involved with, and I'm just wondering, Can you tell me just one of those things that you've really enjoyed being part of?
Well, I suppose I'm going to talk about them as a whole, because for me it's great to share the gospel in lots of different ways. Over all those different things, I had a chance to work with some incredible people, and every one of them brought something different to it. So they were able to help you see more of God and God's love and His truth in the lives of others. So just being able to share alongside other like-minded Christians was just incredible over the past few years.
That's fantastic, Chris. And now I've mentioned there how you're now the youth and family outreach worker at Ballywillan. So during this unpredictable time, what have you and the church been doing to maintain contact with everyone?
Well, I suppose in many ways we are blessed that we've been live streaming services for years. So we've already had that sort of there. So it just meant we were just having to push people more online. Other ways we like to try and maintain relationships is through keeping in contact through either phone calls or text messages. And the great thing about our church family is there's so many of them reaching out to vulnerable members, either just over the phone chatting to them or getting their groceries or just different things, different ways of sort of maintaining that family relationship, even though we can't meet together as a church. Some of the other things, we have family email encouragements with resources and prayer topics each week, and then we have a devotional that goes out on Wednesday afternoon on our Facebook page, Ballywillan Youth. But then one of the biggest things we've had to start doing is recording our Sunday school program. So we've had a lot of fun doing that every Sunday. So we have.
I take it you're meaning these are your video clips and your things after the service. You can also find the full service, but obviously Jam. Explain to me and maybe the listeners what Jam is and what it's about.
So basically, Jam stands for Jesus and Me. So it's basically our Sunday school, which happens sort of halfway through the service and then slightly after the service as well. So it's a chance where children get to come along and they get to sing songs, they get to memorize Bible verses, they get to hear stories about Jesus and do wee crafts and things like that there as well. So it tends to be quite a lot of fun, so it does.
And Chris, how challenging have you found these videos and clips to make? We've mentioned there you were involved in the recording or the promotional videos that you've done with Terrace Row before, but just being on camera, how tough can it be?
Oh, definitely. I think I prefer being behind the camera, if I'm honest, because even when at Terrace Row, most of the time I was just directing. It was very rare that I was on camera for longer than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But no, I prefer being behind the camera. Uh, Basically, it's just like I have a lot of respect for the ones that even the ones we've made go on camera and like
Hmm.
record,
Yeah.
because you realize that even if it's only a couple of lines, you begin to realize how difficult it is to stand on camera and either look into the camera or be like acting, and just
Hmm.
you mess up so many times just to get
Yeah.
one take that's actually good. And the thing as
Definitely.
well, I'm quite awkward on camera. So like I could be chatting away normally to you without the camera, but once I notice the camera, I just become like awkward. So I do.
Hmm.
Um,
I think most people do. I think it's one of those things where we've discussed it before, where you go in front of a camera, and if the temptation, if you make a mistake, you
yeah,
go over and you do it again and again and again. Whereas usually, if you're doing something else, you're pretty much okay. If you miss a word or if you say something back, you can usually go back, and people are quite forgiving. But there is that temptation, particularly when people get behind a camera, more yourself than anything. You
yeah,
just want it to be perfect.
yeah. And then I tend to like tell a lot of puns, as you will know.
Of course, yeah,
So like if I tell jokes or if I make a pun, you don't really know if anyone's laughing. Like so, you're kind of standing there on camera laughing at your own jokes because if
yeah.
you don't know if anyone else is.
It's a shame. It's a shame. So usual response you get the silence.
Yeah.
All right, Chris. Okay, so you may have heard some dramatic music there just before we've hit to the next scene. So don't worry, Chris. We're not putting you under interrogation. The hot seat is a segment for anybody who wants to know a little bit more about Chris. So I'm going to be asking some questions for you, Chris. Some of them are quick fire, but some of them are going to need a little bit more time and thought. So are you up for this, Chris?
That'll do. Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll begin. First of all, cats or dogs?
Dogs, definitely.
Okay, Quality Street or Heroes?
Quality Street because they're quality.
Very good pun there. Are you the sort of person that puts wrappers back into the tins?
Oh no, no. Don't be that
No,
person. Come on.
there's people that out there do that.
Put it in your pocket at least. Don't be that
Seriously,
person.
I know. Anyway, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, that is a good one. The power to be invisible when I want.
Okay, okay. Which person would you have play yourself in a movie based on your life?
So I think I would have James Nesbitt. Like,
Oh right, okay. Is
yeah.
that looks wise or is that just acting wise?
No, 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 no. Just he spoke at my graduation, and like he
Yeah,
literally, he's an all round funny guy, and I think it'd just be a great film to watch.
be a great film about Christopher Cunningham with James Nesbitt.
Yeah, something like that.
Very good. Okay, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what three things would you bring?
Now, is it bad whenever I whenever I thought of this question, the first thing that I instantly thought was my mobile phone? As a
Yes,
Christian, you would have thought Bible would have been
not
first.
a not a family member, not the
No,
Bible,
no.
a loved picture or loved pets.
Yeah, it was
Phone.
mobile phone because like the
Okay.
thing is you don't even know where you're stranded. You might not get a signal, so like it
Well,
it,
yeah.
it might be next to useless. But yeah, it's the one thing that we all sort of desire most at this point
Okay.
is
What are the other two things there?
so definitely Bible,
Okay.
because you still need that encouragement and
Yeah.
teaching. And I feel like I haven't brought anything to like actually keep me alive. Can I bring a fridge full of food? Would that work?
I don't think you have a plug to keep it cool, but
No.
I'm just gonna let you bring the fridge anyway. Okay. Ready? Okay, so this is cause controversy. This is the next question. This is around social media, Chris. So you can only see of three of these food establishments.
Okay.
So you have the picture in front of you, or it's been sent to you before. But for those listening, the options are Domino's, Greg's, Subway, McDonald's, Nando's, Weatherspoons, Pizza Hut, Wagamama, and KFC. Now, Chris, you can only save three of those. Which are you saving?
Well, I think the one that probably most of us would save is McDonald's.
Okay.
Just I think it's I suppose for us in Korean, it's the easiest place to get to and just or make get some food and whatnot. So it's easily if I'm thinking right, I want fast food. McDonald's is usually the first place in mind. Domino's probably next because it's hard to beat a good pizza. So it's hard to beat Domino's. And yeah, actually, I'm trying to think what I normally get from Domino's. Usually, if there's anything meat wise on it, it's good for me. and then
Very good.
and then finally, probably Subway. It's a toss up between
Oh,
Subway and Greg's, to be fair.
all right, Chris. So we've heard some of your preferences and the types of things that you like, but let's just get to it, I suppose. When did you decide to become a Christian?
So this is the interesting part. So I grew up in a Christian family, but for me, even though I had that sort of constant nurturing, it really was like 16, 17 years old before I realized what it actually meant to be a Christian. So like it was one of those things you heard God loves you so many times that you kind of just went in one ear and out the other. So that was about probably 17 years old when I became a Christian.
Okay, and you mentioned there just on it, it's always been there in your life. You've always had that presence. But I suppose maybe if you could have, was there a defining moment? Was there a moment that you decided to become Christian, or a moment that sticks out in your mind that you thought, I want to do this, I want to become a Christian?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So it was probably around near the end of school. So I left school at the end of fifth year. Whenever I really started taking it more seriously. So I remember having a chat with a couple of guys in the canteen in fifth year, and we were chatting about like Christianity and like what does it mean to be a Christian, and the question that they asked me, because they assumed and I assumed at this point that I was a Christian. The question they asked me was, when did you become a Christian? Like, when did you make that commitment? Now, for me, as a fifth year who probably didn't really understand it, my answer was, just whenever I was born, which was met with a lot of laughter. And even I look back at it now and laugh because at the time I didn't quite understand what it
Mm-hmm.
meant to be a Christian. So that was sort of the first sort of little bit where I started to think more deeply about, what does it mean to be a Christian? And that actually there's commitment involved, that it's not just based on what family you grew up in, or who your granda was, or anything like that. There, it's your own personal commitment. So about 4 or 5 months later, the Boys Brigade were doing a night where they invited Crown Jesus Ministries in to talk, and there was a guy there. Now I can never remember his name, but I always remember his story. And his story was that he was injured while playing rugby, while playing schools rugby, and was left disabled. And whilst he should hate the person that did it, whilst he should, wish the worst on him, he actually didn't. He cared for him. He wanted to forgive him. He showed him love. And like, as sort of a 16, 17-year-old boy, I'm sitting there just sort of stunned, going like, huh? What do you mean you want to forgive him? Like, he's basically just changed your life.
Mm-hmm.
But no, this guy was saying about how much he cared for the guy, how much he wanted to forgive him, and how much he loved the guy, even though he'd never really met him before that tackle. And it just kind of had me sitting there going, well, actually, hold on a minute. That's probably a little bit of what God's love is to us. We don't deserve forgiveness, but thanks to God's love and to God's grace, we have that opportunity to be forgiven and to know Him personally as our friend.
That's fantastic, Chris, and it's obviously great to hear that you were inspired by someone else as well about their story.
Yeah.
Well, knowing you, Chris, and knowing you as well as I do, your grandfather has been someone who's supported you. How important is it for someone, I'm just wondering, especially younger, to have someone who can give them advice or encouragement?
Oh, it's vitally important. Like, the thing is, life at times is really difficult, and it leaves you sort of wondering, what's the point to life? So having someone there to support you is vitally important. I'm very blessed at the minute to have a girlfriend who supports me in everything, and it's great to be able to bounce ideas off her and be able to ask like what she thinks of things, and different things like that there. It doesn't necessarily need to be a girlfriend, even though it is great to have a significant other. It could be just someone that's maybe a really close friend. So like in the Bible, Jesus, whenever he's leading the disciples, he's teaching and he's training them. But then at one point he sends them out in pairs to go and do what he's been teaching them. So there's the fellowship of a friend that's there with them. So they're experiencing everything together. So it may not necessarily be a girlfriend, it might be a close friend. It's good to have someone there to support you. Because as well as that, God is a relational God. He's three in one. He's a Trinity. So he is relational, and he wants us to be relational as well. Now, you mentioned my granddad, but there's many others that I can think of, and I'm sure you can as well, of people that have helped you in your faith journey. There's one moment specifically that I remember, and it was a leader at BB. So about third or fourth year, I just wasn't feeling it this night. Like I didn't want to go. So I was adamant in my family that I just wasn't going. That next Sunday, one of the leaders at BB, in fact, I think the captain at the time, came up to my gran and was like, "We missed Chris at BB on Thursday. Is he okay?" And from then on, like just showing that like someone cared for me and someone took the time to notice that I wasn't there, made me want to keep coming back and made me feel welcomed and a part of it.
Totally, and as you say, the support and guidance from other people, particularly when you're younger, really does help you.
Oh yeah, totally. Like it's always good to have someone that's maybe a little bit older and has experienced things that maybe that you're coming up to and going through that maybe you've never experienced before. It's good to have someone that you can talk to about that, who maybe will be able to give you a bit of advice as to get through it. It may not necessarily be the exact situation, but it could be emotions that they've experienced.
Okay, Chris, so the last question. So you seem to have grown so much whenever you became a Christian to now being the youth and family outreach worker at Ballywillan, and now being someone maybe that people come to for support and guidance, a bit like your grandfather there. But have you had any struggles along the way with your faith to get to where you are now?
Oh, totally. Totally. The one thing I would say about things is like faith is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't just become a Christian and then it's all sorted. Because it's not. It's actually the starting step on probably one of the most wonderful journeys that you will ever embark on. But the thing is, as I was saying with life has its challenges. Life has its frustrations, which will try and bring us down. And at the same time, it is okay to be frustrated at times, but it's how you deal with that frustration that is key. So, like venting and taking it out on the person that, if there's a person that's caused that frustration, maybe not the best way to deal with it. But praying about it, talking to God, asking for God's help to deal with it. And then if it is to do with what someone said or done, like talking calmly with it, like with the person over what's been happening, that's usually a good way to deal with frustration. In terms of like Christian faith, definitely one of the big struggles is finding a way to make the relationship work. Because like I said, it is a relationship. And like, put it this way, if you had this friend that you only spoke to whenever it benefited you, so whenever you were getting something out of it, you wouldn't really be much of a friend. And, you know, sometimes we treat God like that, where sometimes we only pray when we need help, or we only spend time with God whenever we can sort of give a few minutes here and there, instead of trusting in Him in everything. So praying about everything. The Bible tells us to pray unceasingly, meaning just to keep praying. And to spend time with God, surrounding ourselves with His presence. And I think one of the big challenges is to find a way to make that work. So, like, you'll hear people have different ways of making it work, and it's finding your own style with it. So, for example, some people are really good at getting up early in the morning. I'm not, but some people are really good at getting up early, sitting down, reading their Bible, and praying. Like maybe at like 6:30, 7 a.m. Whereas others find that actually maybe in the evening there's times where they can sit down and just spend time with God. It's finding what works with you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris. Terrific to hear such an inspiring story and words from you today. Now, if you're looking to connect with some of the things that Chris has mentioned, the Ballywillan are running, remember you can access their website in the link. We'll leave that on our posts. These are the links to the services and children's and youth programs. So Jam that's going ahead, that are going on. But of course, you can just contact Chris directly for more info. Chris, you're okay with
Yeah,
that,
I
aren't you?
am, dude.
100%. Okay. So, and if you've enjoyed this podcast in the near future, I'll hope to have more for you. So please do follow our Facebook page or subscribe to our iTunes or Spotify accounts. Or you can stay updated with Regent Street Presbyterian's church page and youth and children's pages where you can find so many resources and activities for you and your family. So thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you.
And thank you for listening at home.